All right, so now we are going to get into some serious programming now. So make a new file, call it if else. Okay, yeah. All right, so
If else,
yep, if
you
if
said?
if else, yep.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to talk about if statements. If I can spell, jeez. All right, so an if statement basically is pseudocode. So what pseudocode? You probably never heard me say pseudocode, but what pseudocode is English speaking out a function or code in English that's not very specific. So, for example, an if statement: if something is true, do something else. That's pseudocode, very 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 high level pseudocode. That's what if statement says. So if if whatever is true, whatever argument is true, then run what's underneath it. Now, I haven't emphasized this until now, but indentions are incredibly important to Python. Other programs, not so much, but to Python, it is absolutely necessary that you use proper indentions. Okay, so let's set up this argument. So we have the if statement itself, where we have two values. X is equal to 2, y is equal to 1. So how we write it, if we look at line 3, if something is true, do something. So if x is greater than 2, colon, enter, print x is all right. So everybody get that typed up, and let's talk about it before we run it.
Still typing. And you just use the single quotation inside the
It doesn't
parentheses
matter.
there?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. So when I hit the colon and I went down to the next line to go print, it automatically indented, I noticed.
Yep.
Like I didn't have to indent it. That's nice.
Yeah. Other IDEs, other things like VS Code might not necessarily do that, but VS Code does do that for you.
Okay.
Okay, everybody have this all typed up?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So how this reads is first off we're assigning two variables numbers. So x is equal to 2, y is equal to 1. Okay, easy enough. And then we're saying if oh sorry. Supposed to be x is greater than y. Sorry there. So if x is greater than y, then do what's ever indented underneath this. So in that case, print this statement: x is larger than y. So now if we run that, we should say x is larger than y, because it is, right? X is larger than y. Now, let's do the opposite. Go ahead and copy this whole thing. And do y is greater than x. Alright, so I'm just inverting x and y's there. Okay. So, is y greater than x? Is y greater than x?
Hold on, mine. I went to go copy and it deleted everything.
Just yeah, press Control Z. You should get it all back.
Yeah, it's not coming back.
Okay. Let me know when you get caught up.
You can keep going.
Okay, is y greater than x? Anybody?
No.
Zach, are you behind too?
I'm following along. I was trying to get everything typed, but now I'm back.
Okay.
X is larger than Y, is what it keeps saying.
Yeah.
Even after I flipped them,
I know. I'm asking before you run it. I'm asking, is y greater than x?
no.
No. So should this statement so if this is false, then the statement shouldn't run.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to get somebody to answer. So this if statement, this part has to be true in order for it to run. So this first one's true. Yeah, okay. But the second one isn't. So what Python does is it goes, looks at the statement, is y greater than x? No, it's not. So I'm not going to do this, and I'm just going to keep on trucking. So that's important to realize what is happening, because the program goes from the top and moves down, and once it gets to these statements, it starts processing the statements. Is this true? Yes. Okay, run it. Is this one true? No. Then skip it. So now, what happens if you want to do something that's not so cut and dry as one put? So if, let's say, x is greater than 1, let's say if x is greater than 10, print x is larger than 10. But let's say I want to do another one where if x is, like, let's say 9. So that's where we introduce this elif. So that means if this top one isn't true, then it looks at the next one. So then is x equal to 9. Print and if that's not true, elif, let's say x is equal to 2, print so here we're introducing this elif. So is this if true? If it's not true, then look at this second if. Is that true? If it's not true, look at the third if, or the next else if. If that's not true, then escape. But if this one's true, then it runs that, and then it hops out of this whole thing and skips down to the next line. So, if we do, let's say 10 for example, here. If we look at this program, this if function, well, let's do 11, sorry. So if we run it here, is x greater than 10? Well, yeah, it's 11, so it should print this first one. And then it escapes out of this if statement, all these if statements, skips the whole thing, and goes down to line 23 and keeps running. So this is what we should see here. So x is larger than 10, and then done. It didn't do x is equal to 9, x is equal to 2, yada, yada, yada. It just did the first one. That was true, and then escaped. So let's try 9 here. All right, have you guys typed all this up yet?
Still
Yeah,
typing. So are we going to highlight and run from if x is greater than 10? That's where we're going.
Yeah. So I set x to 9 this time. So when you run this, is x greater than 10 here? No, because it's 9. So it's going to skip this for, let's say, is x equal to 9? Yes, so it's going to print that guy. And we can see that there. X is equal to 9. So the point here is these if else statements, all that stuff, whichever one of these comparators is true, it's going to run that stuff inside of there, and then it's going to jump out of this whole entire piece and be done. Okay? Now, there's one more component we can add, and let's do and it's called an else statement. So let's go a little bit further here. So let's come here, if with elif statement, and elif, let's say backup if statement, if backup if statement if the first if statement isn't true. That's what an else if is. So let's move on to the next one if that's not. I know that's a little bit confusing statement wise, but we'll make a little bit of sense here. So if with elif and else statement. So an else says that if everything else above is false, then run. So we could say imp equals integer input, enter a number. So this, I'm using pieces from classes before. So remember, an input opens up the terminal and asks you to put in a value. And then we're going to use the data type to convert it to a number from a string and set it to input. Then we're going to say if imp is equal to 1, print you entered 1. Not very creative. Okay. And then elif imp, let's say, is equal to 2. Print you entered 2. That's 1 more than 1. Elif imp equals 3. Print you entered 3. That's a lot of numbers. I'm just making up stuff, obviously. Else okay, so everybody type that up and we'll talk about it here.
Not too surprising. Alex can only count to 3.
Did you see that video I sent you?
Which one?
I can only count to 4.
I think I've seen that before. I haven't watched the one that you sent me though.
1. I can only count to 1, 2. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Alright, so you guys get that typed up and let me know.
Yep, gonna be a minute.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
I can't type it when you keep changing the screen.
Sorry. You guys still typing?
Done.
Yeah.
Alright, so you're done? Cool. Alright, so what this does is let's talk through this. So line 32 basically prompts you in the terminal to enter a number, takes that number converts it to an integer, because when you put in a value through the terminal, Python takes it as a string, because you can put in numbers, you can put in characters, you can put in spaces and symbols and all that stuff. So you have to tell it, I want it to be a integer. So that's where that int component gets used. So it takes that string, and as long as you put in a number, you can break this. There's no checking here. So you enter a number, it's going to convert that string to a number, and set it to the variable imp, short for input. All right. Then it's going to say if input is equal to the value 1, so this is a comparator, right? 2 equal signs means it's comparing something. So if the number inside input is equal to 1, then print this number. And then after it's done, if this is true and it's printed, that's it. It's not going to do anything else. It's going to eject out of this if process and just be done. If it's false, then it's going to look at this next one. Okay, is the number you inputted equal to 2? If it is, then do this. If not, it's going to move down to 3 and say, is this equal to 3? And if you do that and compare it and it's not equal to 3, then it's going to move down to the else. So that means that if 1 isn't true, 2 isn't true, or 3 isn't true, then just do this. So everything else from negative infinity to 1 and 4 to infinity, all those numbers will fall under this guy. So if we run it, it says enter a number in here, right? Everybody run it. Tell me if you see the enter a number component. Yep. Okay. So let's put in 1. All right. So it says you entered 1. Not very creative. All right. Let's do 3. You entered 3. That's a lot of numbers. All right. Now let's try. Let's say I accidentally mistyped it. I put in 23. What is that going to do? Before you guys run it, what's it going to do?
Nothing.
Well, it'll do something.
It'll no idea what number you entered.
Yeah, there you go. No idea what you entered. So you can. This is like a catch-all statement, right? So later, there's a lot of room to mess up here, right? Because what if you enter a number and you accidentally said Q1 instead of 1? It's going to fail, right? Because Q1, that's not a number. I can't convert Q1 into an integer, so it just fails. So later we'll start learning how to handle those kinds of things without just wrecking the whole system. But for now, this else is a catch-all for any of these other if statements that don't work. And you could have 50 else if statements if you wanted. Like we did 2 here. You can only have 1 if, because the if starts this whole process. You can only have 1 if, you can only have 1 else, but you could have 100 elifs inside of that. So if we did if imp equals 9, that's a whole nother loop. And so it's going to run this guy no matter where it lands, and then it's going to go straight to 41 and do that too. So you can only have if statements can have only one if, one else, and as many elif as needed. Okay, so that's pretty important to realize. Okay. Any questions there? Does that make sense? Have you covered this already, Casey, in your lessons?
Yeah, I started to.
Started to? Okay.
The rock paper scissors thing that I did the other day did a lot of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you see the thing I posted?
Yeah, I did see that. It was a lot of. I mean that's one way to do it, and they're teaching you, like nested if statements, right?
Yeah.
So Zach, what Casey was doing is you can put multiple things in here. Like we're just doing prints here, but really you could do other if statements within the if statement too, right?
Okay.
So what Casey was doing, his lesson was showing him was, let's say instead of numbers, you get 1, 2, or 3. One's rock, 2 paper, 3 scissors, and then you have, okay, if input is equal to rock, for example, then you go in here and compare your if your chose Rochambeau item chosen is the one that trumps the other one, then do something. So an if inside an if, and actually they go an if inside of if inside of an if. Nope, just two in. But I've seen
Yeah,
2, 3.
It was starting to get a little confusing for like a brief second while I was typing all that out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's confusing, and there's better ways to do it, but they were teaching you something specific there. So I'm not gonna dog on them for having such a weird statement there, but it works. It works good.
It does work. And I messed up while I was typing it, and I had to fix it. I had to actually debug my own script on that one.
Good. Yeah. So
Which is on the picture, actually. You can see it.
where you made the mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at it later, see if I can find it.
It's line number 8.
8.
And then you go down to line 37.
Oh yeah, you have 20 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So, did you do the homework already that I showed Michael? I shared with Michael, Casey?
No, I hadn't got to it.
No. All right. So here's the homework that I gave to Michael. And this actually brings in all the lessons we've learned in the past 2 sessions. So make an elif else statement that prompts a user for a number. Then compare that number to 3 cases. So remember, you can only have one if, and you have 2 else ifs, and then an else case. So that catch-all, right? So remember, you can only have one if and one else. That's what this is telling you here. So really, you should have 4 of these, like we have here. If, elif, else. Have Python compare the number entered to a true-false modulo comparison to figure out if the number entered is a multiple of 2, 3, or 5. Or none of the above. So remember, modulo is that like 2 modulo whatever, right? Or number modulo 2, stuff like that. If there's a remainder, then you do something. Have one print statement in each case, informing the user of the multiplicative case. So, for example, if the user entered in 4, then the print statement should say 4 is a multiple of 2, where 4 is the value entered by the user. So, in short, this this modulo, we're using that modulo to determine a random number somebody enters. Is it a multiple of 2, multiple of 3, or multiple of 5? If it's none of them, then say it's none of them. If it's 2, tell it's a multiple of 2. If it's 3, tell it's multiple of 3. It's multiple of 5, tell it's multiple of 5. If it's a multiple of 2, 3, and 5, we're not going to cover that. So if the user enters in 30, it should probably do what? What would you think? Because remember, I guess I never really talked about this, but I kind of did, I guess. In these,
I'll ask a question.
yeah.
Alex, what happens if, like, say on the homework, if I enter in, say, 10,
That's what I was
it's
just.
a multiple.
That's what I was
It's
trying
a
to explain.
multiple of 2 and a multiple of 5.
Yep, that's what I was just getting to. So, if you put in 10, it is multiple of 2 and multiple of 5. But if statements, how it works is whichever if statement is true first, then it will handle that and eject. So, that
And
is
that's
not
the same if you say 30.
same thing with 30, right? Because 30 is 2, 3, and 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not going to cover that because that's a whole. That is an actual job application question called FizzBuzz, and we can work that out together next time. But that's to solve that simple question, Michael, is like an hour-long discussion.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's easy, but I have to teach some other stuff before we can even get to it. So, if you do, I don't know, 12 or whatever, it will, whichever one's true first, should just eject to that one. Which, it's a good question. You asked it the other day, and I didn't want to tell you what to do exactly because it would make your head start reeling and you might forget everything we just learned. Honestly, like it's not easy, and it's called the FizzBuzz problem. So, like this isn't even really right. And you can see that's not Python, right? Have I really talked about? Well, no, that is Python, but so we have to start talking about like and statements and or statements and stuff like that, which is going to be the next lesson. So by the next lesson, we might come back and rework this to accept all those other ones. But for now, we'll start here because you guys don't know. You might know, but I haven't taught you truth tables and or statements, stuff like that, right? Does anybody know those yet?
I did a little bit on the app.
Okay, yeah. So
No.
yeah, I'll say if Zach hasn't done work ahead, he wouldn't know. I mean, it probably makes sense logically, but we still need to spell it out Pythonically to understand it. And so
Okay, so
yeah,
sorry. For the homework, I was writing down what you said, and then I got lost like 3 seconds into it. Could I get just a very Reader's Digest condensed instructions of what we're supposed to do for the homework? Because I was listening, I didn't understand.
yep. So
Make an LA thing.
this if elif else is this
Mhm.
guy, right? That's an if statement with elif and else involved.
Yeah.
That prompts a user for a number. So it's going to ask you in the terminal, give me a number, and then take that number they enter and compare it to 3 different cases. So there's one if, right? Because you always have to have one if. And there's 2 else ifs. So we have 2 of these. And then if it doesn't fit those, well, and then a catch-all. But what you want to do is have the number entered to a true or false modulo comparison. So basically, do the number modulo one of your cases, and if it's a multiple of it, then run that line. If not,
Okay.
move on to the next one. If I spell it out anymore, I'll have told you how to do it.
That's fine.
Yep. And then each statement inside should tell you, like, hey, the number you entered is a multiple of whatever, right? If it is, like, if you put in 7, then obviously it's going to go to this catch-all, and you're going to basically say, like, I don't know, man, like, it doesn't fit anything. So you're going to use the else if stuff we talked about. You're going to use the comparators. You're going to use the modulo. Is that in here? No. You're going to use the modulo. And then you're going to use input, which we actually covered here, which we covered last time too, but it's covered here more recently.
Okay.
Yep. And then it's going to cover the prints, because remember, we're printing. We're printing a variable. It's included in there.
So can you use value instead of numbers when you're doing stuff in Python?
What do you mean?
Like instead of how to put it? It's value equals the integer instead of number equals the integer.
Oh, you can use whatever you want. You could use bikini babes equals a number.
Okay.
Yeah, the variable is named whatever you want. You can name
Like
it.
for the
Yep. You can name it rock concert. Rock bands. Led Zeppelin equals input, and they compare Led Zeppelin against everything else. Whatever you want to do there. That's there's some naming conventions, but we haven't got there yet. So don't think too hard about that. You just can't use some reserved names. Like you can't set if equal to a number, because if is reserved for this if statements. Stuff like that. But what good programmers do, and we'll get to that later, is we will start. They'll use the variable as a descriptor of what's going in there. So, for example, the variable zip. Okay. Zip equals 67002. It's understood that the variable going into zip is probably some sort of zip code, right? You don't have to spell that out. You don't have to say zip is a number that's a zip code. Don't type this in, guys. This is just discussion. So you wouldn't have to put this comment in your program because it's understood. Zip is probably a US zip code, right? Make sense? So we'll get to that. And that's something junior developers struggle with is, okay, where is the balance between